Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions, here to talk about Season 5, Episode 6, Birth Mother. The one in which Randall finally learns the truth about his biological mother. Kevin and Kate's stories take a seat here, though Kevin shows up at the very end, and we will talk about that. Kate doesn't appear in this episode at all. Just a reminder, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, I highly recommend you do so before coming back and watching this video. A few things I want to talk about before we get into the actual episode itself. First, a correction. In the last video for Episode 5, Season 5, I said that Madison and Kevin were talking to a realtor when in fact they were actually interviewing for a nanny. Yes, your favorite Corman production commentator occasionally screws things up, and that is an example of such. But the good news is, and this information came from both my friend Stacy and a couple of other people who are not my best friend also brought this up. As I said, there is good news about that though. It means that people are actually watching my videos all the way through and discovering my mistakes. So bravo to that. And on that same topic, this channel has reached 200 subscribers. We got a long way to go, but that is an important milestone for my channel. The last thing I wanted to say before actually starting to talk about this episode actually applies to the current episode. And that's some of the comments I'm seeing, and I've seen more than a few people who've said this, that they are tired of Randall constantly searching for answers. That's the general idea of what some of these people are saying. Now, I'm not adopted, but I can imagine that if you were abandoned by your family, your original parents, at a fire station perhaps, even if you were adopted into the most amazing family ever, there's still going to be abandonment issues there. There are still going to be questions about why your parents chose to do that. Randall eventually got some answers about what occurred there when he finally met his biological father, William. And he thought he had all the answers. He learned William's story, and Laurel was dead. And then all of a sudden, he discovers that his mother in fact wasn't dead, that she was living up until 2015, which is a year before our series began. Randall eventually learned that William knew nothing about that, so he didn't lie to him. But that doesn't erase the question of, why didn't my birth mother try to find me? If you are adopted, or heck, just a human being, it is natural to question, who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? What does it all mean? These questions are the ones that we all ask. Not to the extreme that someone like Randall, who was abandoned by his family, would ask. But nevertheless, we all ask these questions. They are part of the human condition. And if you can't empathize with that, then what can you have empathy for? The fact that Randall's adopted parents showed him love doesn't change these questions. He loved both of them. But again, that doesn't change these questions. I was not adopted, and yet I can understand this perspective with minimal effort, I might add. So my question is, to those who would criticize Randall on this, why can't you? My final point before getting into the actual episode, and I promise this is actually the final point. This story is Laurel's, but it is being told by Hai. As a result, I don't think we can take everything that we see that happens at face value, because it is being filtered through Hai. Some things will be misinterpreted or misremembered, but this is almost entirely irrelevant, as it doesn't matter if what we see is completely true. What matters is the impact that it has on Randall. We open up this episode with Beth and Randall on their way to New Orleans. Randall isn't talking very much, and Beth asks him about it. And he tells her that he's thinking about the last time that the two of them went up here, which apparently was for an anniversary. He's thinking that they could have passed right by her without him knowing about it. We cut to them arriving at Hai's house. Hai is sitting out on the patio. They exchange pleasantries, and Beth makes a comment about it being a nice place that he has. And Hai tells Randall that it's actually his. It belonged to his mother, and now it belongs to him. And Hai happily invites them in. And credits. 2 minutes and 14 seconds. When we come back, Hai says to Randall, while pouring him tea or coffee, I'm not sure what, that he must have a million questions. And Randall says that's about in the ballpark, with a smile on his face. And Hai tells him that he will tell him what he knows from the beginning. Hai tells him that she was a part of a distinguished family, and that was a lot of pressure for Laurel. We cut to the past scenes of Laurel as a kid, and Chi McBride is playing her father. Man, does that guy even age? You might know Chi McBride from the TV show Boston Public back in the day, or as a co-star of Will Smith's in I, Robot. I most remember him as Nelson Codd from Pushing Daisies, a very short-lived series that I loved and I wish it went on longer. Her father is some big businessman, and he's going to go into the office, but Laurel's mother suggests that they go on a walk. And her father asks Laurel, what is it that he always says? And she seems clueless. To which he says that she should start paying more attention in mass. So he asks her son, and the actor playing his son looks very much like Chi McBride, to the point where I almost thought they cast his son to play this part. But as it turns out, he's played by Keon Bowman, and there's absolutely no relation. His son says, to whomever much is given, much is required. Luke 12:48. So Chi McBride is off to the office. Their mother tells the kids that she is going to lie down, and that she doesn't want to hear the television before homework is completed. When they're both gone, Laurel's brother tells him that she cannot let their dad ruffle her feathers. And then young Laurel asks him to cover for her while she goes and sees Aunt May, which apparently she is not supposed to do so. And she tells him to come with him if she's worried about it. And then he responds, who's going to sneak you in if I do so? We see Laurel on her way to see Aunt May. Aunt May is tending her garden when she somehow senses that Laurel is behind her. and she tells her to mind her peppers. And Laurel says, I forgot that you have eyes in the back of your head. And Aunt May responds, Nope, I just know you, and there are two people in this world. Those who mind where they're going, and those who just plunge away ahead without any clue, throwing their arms out, plunging themselves into the void without the least bit worry about what's down below. And Laurel asks, How do you know? And it's because Aunt May is the same way. After visiting Aunt May, which it seems to be at night, Laurel returns. Her brother tries to sneak her in, but they are not successful. Their dad catches him. She very quietly tells him, Aunt May. And she, McBride, says, After I forbade it? If you even think about going over there again, I'm going to give you the lashing the likes of which you have never seen. I will not tolerate a disobedient child. And man, Laurel's father is not a very nice guy. Now, I will say that I had some trouble getting into these early scenes. I frequently have problems like getting into episodes that don't involve the characters that we see week in and week out. But eventually, this episode got me. We cut to a scene of Laurel and her brother. Laurel has decided to take refuge in his room. And she says she doesn't understand the beef between her father and Aunt May. They're blood. How can they hate each other? And she says to her brother, I could never hate you. Between you and Aunt May, you're the only two that understand me. And her brother responds, I don't understand you. Which earns him a punch in the arm. We only see these two characters for a short while, but we get a sense of their relationship in that time. We cut to a little later in the timeline, when Laurel finds out that her brother died in combat. We cut to a scene of Laurel once again sitting with Aunt May out by the lake. Aunt May is comforting her about the death of her brother. She asks, What am I going to do without him? And Aunt May says, God can take your pain, my sweet Laurel. But you have to let it go. Just like that? How long is this after her brother died that she's saying let go of the pain? But okay, the point of this is that it actually ties into later, and we'll talk about that. But Laurel says, I don't know how. Aunt May suggests that she go into the water and let it all out. She slowly makes her way into the water. Her attention turns to the heavens, and she lets out a scream. We cut back to Randall, who looks emotional. He takes a sip of whatever it is he's drinking. And Beth asks him, Is it too much? And Randall responds that no. He just met and lost a brother in the span of 5 minutes. That he didn't know that Hai would know quite that much about her. And he asks, How did you know her exactly? And Hai responds, She was the love of my life. Hai tells Randall that after the war ended, the church brought refugees to this place. It was the perfect home for them. It was out in the lake that Hai heard Laurel for the first time, screaming. And Hai thinks this means that Laurel is in trouble, so he jumps in the water to save her. But as it turns out, she doesn't need any help, and she's not appreciative of his attempts to help her. And Hai tells Randall he couldn't stop thinking about the woman who wasn't drowning, which was her name until he found out her actual name. We cut to May and Laurel working at some kind of market, an outdoor market. And May says that her bones appreciate it, but she doesn't want to cut into her time with the handsome fellow. And apparently she's dating some guy named Marshall. And Laurel says that he is working with her father, like always, and insists that that comment is not a complaint. Any woman in New Orleans would be lucky to have him. Not May responds, so he's a dud, which causes Laurel to laugh. She's taking some vegetables somewhere, leaving the scene, when she runs into Hai, also working at the market. He doesn't quite speak good English at this point, so he dunks his head in some water to demonstrate or relive the moment that he thought she was drowning, and she laughs. She tells him that she is Laurel, and he responds, "Hi." And again, for the second episode in a row, there was a Hai joke in here, with her misinterpreting what he says as a greeting instead of his name. As a romantic gesture, Hai gives her a dead fish. Aww. He takes one of the fish that he's selling, wraps it up in a newspaper, and hands it to her. He says that she's not much of a cook. And then, in response, he says that he will cook for her. Invitation accepted. And a cute little romance begins, as we see through a little montage with Hai speaking over it, narrating it. I assume that Hai gets a little better with English as time goes on, because otherwise I'm not really sure how these two would communicate, other than through constant charades, which I suppose would be fun. Hai declares it the best time of his life, and then we cut to an awkward dinner scene with Marshall and Laurel and the family, before cutting over to a scene with Laurel only wearing a sheet and Hai not wearing a shirt. We can all assume what's going on in this scene. She says to him, "I want to tell you something, but you can't laugh at me." She tries to say, "I love you," in Hai's language. And eventually, Hai says it back. Laurel returns home and is caught by her dad, much like she was as a child. But this time around, he isn't yelling at her. She informs him that Marshall is about to propose. He gave his blessing. It was an easy yes. Marshall is coming over for dinner, and if he has his mind on proposing, she will say yes. He instructs her. But this clearly doesn't thrill her very much, and even with old age, Chi McBride is still an a-hole. Well, really just his character, not the actor himself. I'm sure he's a fine, upstanding gentleman. In response, Laurel decides to run away. She tries to take Hai with her, but Hai won't go. He wants her to stay with him, but she can't. He can't go because his parents would not survive without him. When we cut back to the present day, Randall is getting antsy. He wants to know what he wants to know, and he's starting to lose his patience. Comparing Hai's story to The Notebook, which it does bear some resemblance to. Randall starts getting agitated and wants to know why his mom never went looking for him. And it's because she was in jail. She went to jail for possession of drugs. And she was there till 1985. And Hai simply says, the story isn't The Notebook at all. She wasn't in prison right away. She was in the hospital for a while, where she would ask, where is her baby? And we can hear the nurses vaguely expressing not a lot of sympathy about the situation, saying that the baby is better without her. The police are trying to give her one phone call, but she can't call home because William and her did not have a phone. She ends up calling her dad, but says nothing. She can't bring herself to do it. He knows that it's her on the phone, and she hangs up without saying anything. When she gets out, she doesn't feel worthy of being a mother to Randall. She feels that this is her penance. She goes home with what little money she has and finds Aunt May. Her parents are still alive at this point because May references them, but she doesn't want to go home to them. Aunt May tells her that she has nothing to be ashamed of in response to some of the track marks on Laurel's arm. But Laurel disagrees. She had a child with a man who loved her, and she doesn't know where this child is. Late at night, in her nightgown, Laurel walks into the lake as she once did as a teen. And she looks up into the heavens and screams. After commercials, May and Laurel are at the market, and May responds to a comment that a customer made about Laurel never smiling, and Laurel says she can't find a reason to smile. Until she spots Hai, still at the market. He waves, and Beth interrupts at this point to say all that sexual chemistry and all they could muster up was a wave. Well, at this point, Hai was a very happily married man, so he couldn't do much more than that. He took comfort in knowing that she was at the market and that she could see him, or rather her. Until decades pass, and one day, he notes she isn't at the market. His wife had passed away, and his kids had gotten old and moved on. Not seeing her at the market, he goes to knock on her door. She was sick, with cancer, and it was beyond the treatment phase. Hai asks her if she's eaten today, and she responds no. And Hai says, I cook, you eat. And thus, a long dormant friendship is reborn. The doctors were wrong about her prognosis. She managed to live another couple years. He got to learn Laurel's story, the parts that he wasn't privy to, and about Randall. We see a scene of Laurel and Hai. Hai asks her what she's thinking about, and she responds, my son. I wish I had told him. And Hai assures her that she will get the chance to do so. Back in the present, Beth says, what a life. And Randall just kind of looks at her, looking sad. And Hai says, "It's weird. After all this time, I can still feel her presence. When I go swimming in the lake, I swear I can hear her laughter." Hai tells him that he has something for Randall, and it turns out to be a key to the house. "Are you sure? You've been maintaining this house all this time." And Hai just simply says, "It's yours." And Randall says, "I don't know how to thank you for today." And Hai says, "I've been waiting a long time to do this for Laurel. I should be thanking you." And Hai says, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow for breakfast." And then he leaves the house. Where does he go? I'm not really sure. I thought Hai was living in this house. And Beth asks him, "How are you holding up?" And Randall says, and he looks really confused. He says, "We own a farmhouse by a lake in New Orleans where my dead biological mother grew up and fell in love with her Vietnamese boyfriend. That's how I'm holding up." Almost laughing a little bit and a little bit emotional. We cut to a hotel room where Beth is sleeping and Randall is writing something. He eventually writes her a note and says he's going for a drive, that he'll be back, and that he loves her. The place he's going is to Laurel's old home. He looks around the house, sees some pictures, and then makes his way outside, where he starts stripping. And stripping is how this entire adventure began. He strips all of his clothes off, and a lot of female posters online commented on Sterling K. Brown's butt. I'm not going to do so. Though I suppose by saying I'm not going to do so, I have in fact done so. Anybody got any aspirin? Anyway, Randall makes his way into the lake and eventually sees a hallucination of his dead mother. And this scene would have been out of place in a horror movie, as he's startled by the sound of his mom laughing. I wouldn't have been surprised if she pulled him under and started trying to drown him, but that's not where the scene goes. She says, "My baby." Emotionally, he says, "I didn't even know I was looking for you. Now I found you, and you're gone." She tells him that she's sorry, that she wished she could change everything. But of course she can't. What's done is done. All this sadness, it's weighing you down. And she laughs a little bit and says, "You have my eyes. I see so much pain in you. Aren't you tired?" And Randall, with tears in his eyes, starts to nod. And she tells him, "You need to let the pain go." And Randall says, like she said all those years ago, "I don't know how." And she says, "Yes, you do." A few beats, he closes his tearing eyes and turns his attention to the stars and starts to scream. In Vietnamese, she tells him that she loves him. But Randall doesn't understand her, though I'm pretty sure that he does, because this is a hallucination, so he's talking to himself. But anyway, she says something I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. I love you. And a much younger Laurel repeats, I love you. And Randall, emotionally, but smiling, says, I love you too. Well, damn it, man. However many Emmys that Sterling K. Brown, I keep saying this, and I cannot say it enough. He cannot win enough awards. He's just a great, great performer. Which is one of the chief reasons that he gets so many storylines like this. Because he knocks it out of the park every single time. In the car ride home, Randall is smiling. And Beth says, he seems different. And Randall says, I know my birth story. And it's not just about me being abandoned at a fire station. It's about two people. Two imperfect people that loved me. And he says, after a beat, I'm gonna call Kevin. And Beth is surprised. What, now? And Randall says, I don't want to hold on to the bad stuff anymore. I want to let it go. He calls via speakerphone and says that he's driving home from New Orleans and he was wondering if they could talk. And Kevin says that it's not a good time because his life is falling apart. Madison is having the kids early. He should have never come to Vancouver. And Randall says, hey, Kev. And Kevin is basically like, look, Randall, I'm sorry, I'll call you soon. And then we see him drive off. Okay, so there was a contingent of the fans who criticized Randall for hanging up on Kevin in the last episode. I was not among them. I didn't really have a problem with it. It seems to be a partisan issue. If you like Kevin, then boo Randall. If you like Randall and don't like Kevin, it's the opposite. For me, I like them both. I take them to task when I feel like they need to be taken to task. The Randall side of the equation started going, well, hey, if you had a problem with Kevin hanging up last week, then you have to have a problem with this. Well, I don't think that either man really needs to. I don't think we need to. There's no real reason to have a problem with either of these hang-ups, and especially not in Kevin's case. He just found out that Madison is going into labor early. I don't even know where this is in the timeline, but when Kevin left, there was 9 weeks before the babies were supposed to be born? Which puts her at 27 weeks. And it doesn't become... 24 weeks is considered extremely premature. And 28 weeks is just premature, with an 80% survival. Earlier than that, it's 60 to 70%. So the babies and Madison could conceivably be in trouble here. And he's in Vancouver, and he's trying to get home, and he can't do that quickly. He's panicking. Definitely not the right time to try to have a heart-to-heart talk. He's out of his mind at this point. And that's how we end this episode. We get a preview for next week's episode titled There. And all it is Kevin's burnt out car having clearly gotten into some kind of accident with his license in view of the camera. And okay, come on. We know Kevin isn't dead, though that car crash looks pretty bad. His car is literally on fire. But Kevin isn't dead. We know this because we've been to the future timeline and he's alive. If anything, Madison's life is potentially in danger. We don't see her in the future at all so far. They wanted to maintain the mystery, but also, maybe she's not there because she's no longer living. There has been ample speculation that Madison would die in childhood, and I sincerely hope that we aren't going in that direction. I like Madison. I don't want to see her go. I especially don't want to see her go like that. But I said it before and I'll say it again. The promo people need to be fired. Like, give me a break. Kevin's life is not in jeopardy, so why insinuate that it is? Why not actually show me what the episode is potentially going to be about, instead of a promo designed to shock me and potentially scare me about the fate of Kevin, which again, we know Kevin is going to be okay. Anyway, this was an absolutely beautiful episode. Great performances all around. Sterling K. Brown just deserves a shelf full of Emmys. Maybe a house full of them. Alright, that's all I got for you today for this video. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Facebook group, Corman Productions. And actually, I just made a new Facebook group specifically for This Is Us discussion, and my videos appear there. So you can also join that. Both of the links will be provided on the description of this video. You can also buy something from the Corman Productions store at Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. As I said, we just reached 200, and I need about 800 more to reach my goal. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.